With breaking news and political commentary from a public servant, serial entrepreneur, community leader, philanthropist, and American patriot, and a darn nice guy, it's time for the Grassroots Truthcast and your host, Gene Valentino.
Hi friends, Gene Valentino, and welcome to another episode of Gene Valentino's Grassroots Truthcast. You know, we have guests on from different political and social walks of life on Grassroots Truthcast. Today's guest is a gentleman who has come to us, and he's a very unique individual. He happens to be the oldest of four children of the 40th President of the United States. His name is Michael Reagan. Michael, thank you for joining us here today on Grassroots Truthcast.
Good to be with you, but I also had a mother, Jane Wyman. And
Yes,
to
sir.
let you know, I was Jane Wyman's son until November of 1964. And my father gave that great speech, A Time for Choosing. And the next day, I became Ronald Reagan's son. So for half my life, I was explaining I had a father. And the last half of my life, I'm explaining I had a mother.
Well, there's, and we're going to get into that and a whole plethora of issues of what Michael Reagan, who's out in the West Coast in California right now. We're going to talk about Michael's history, his past that he's just described, and the Reagan legacy, what he's doing now with it and where it's going right after this.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever.
For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values
that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Hi, friends, and welcome back to Grassroots Truthcast. And my guest today, Michael Reagan, one of four children of Ronald Reagan and Jane Wyman, award-winning actress in California. Michael, I thought today we'd talk in the beginning about the past, what it was like being the president's son, your early days in the Reagan household, and then let's transition to some of the current events and some of the legacy issues that you're involved in including the foundation. About your background, tell us the early days of the Reagan family.
You know, it's really interesting because I go out and speak, and I'm a really good speaker. And in fact, I'm giving a speech in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania next week. And if I open it up to Q&A, which I normally do, that's the first question. First question is, how was it growing up in that household? And I could have told them the World Trade Center just got hit by planes. They go, yeah, but how was it being raised in the Reagan household? I mean, that's what you deal with on a regular basis. I mean, there's only two people, and that was my sister Maureen and I, born into a family where the mother would go on to become an Academy Award-winning actress, and the father would go on to become president of the United States. No other two people have ever lived that life ever, and it will probably never, ever happen again. And so people ask me that question all the time. It wasn't much different, except that I was in Hollywood. And all the Hollywood kids, we all went to boarding school. People say, when did you leave home? I said, I was 6. 6? Yeah, we all went to boarding school. 6 years old, you can go to first grade. And so I went to boarding school, like my sister went to boarding school, like the Crosby kids went to boarding school, like the Hope kids went to boarding school. It was like student body right, student body left. And it sucked. If you go back to a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, and you see other kids being picked up by their parents who are day students, and you're going to a dorm at night, sleeping in a dorm without your family. I mean, I understand it now. I'm older. And if you don't end up dealing with it, you'll be a ticked off child all of your entire life, because it's not easy just seeing your parents on the weekend and basically having to reintroduce yourself to them. Say, I'm your son, Michael. I was here last Sunday. Remember me? You dropped me off at school. So that's what it was growing up. But my dad, who was terrific, because my mom and dad divorced when I was 3. And she won the Academy Award in 1948, Best Actress for Johnny Belinda. And my dad never forgot about Maureen and I. He would come over and pick us up on Saturday and take us out to the ranch. I learned about America sitting in the right front seat of a station wagon on any given Saturday morning, listening to him sing the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard, all those songs. Tell me about America and the greatness of it. Before I learned about it, I learned about the tax system in America, so that same right front seat. And Sunday, he'd come pick Maureen and I up and take us over to Grandma's, his mom. And his mom was a Sunday school teacher, and we go over there and we go to Sunday school and come back and have lunch in her backyard with a big tortoise. So, I mean, they did the best they could as parents, being in the acting business, and you're on location. So that's why so many of us went to boarding school, because the parents weren't going to be home anyway.
Did you? But that was because of both of their careers, but you said you lost your sister. It was Maureen.
Yeah, I lost Maureen at 60 years old. 2000. And what, 21?
Yeah.
Or not
Yeah.
2000. I'm sorry, 2001.
No, I knew that. So remaining are 3 others, half or step siblings: Ron Prescott, and is it Priscilla?
Patty.
Forgive me. And are they in California now too?
Patty is, I think, Ron goes between Italy and Washington State. His wife has a place in Italy, so they go back and forth, if you will. His first wife died quite a few years ago, and he got remarried and what have you. But Patty lives here in California, yes.
Well, long before that time, when you were growing up, I heard a story. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but tell me about Marilyn Monroe knocking at your door.
Well, it's as I said, I go out and speak a lot. And, when I speak to a Christian group, one question always comes up: when did you know there was a God? I said, that's the easiest of all. I said, my sister and I were going to buy a gift for our mother for her 40th birthday, rode our bikes into Beverly Hills, and there was this beautiful silver serving tray, and inlaid on it was this beautiful blonde-haired woman, looked like red satin over the top of her. I said to Maureen, I said, Merm, let's get this for Mom. She said, we can't get that for Mom. I said, but it's really pretty. Might be pretty. We can't take that to Mom for her birthday. So we found something else and took it on home. And that night I was in charge of the front door for people coming in, to open the front door, tell people where to go in the house for the party. And the doorbell rang, and I said, open the door. And I was looking at the layout on that silver tray, Marilyn Monroe. And I tell the Christian group I'm talking to, that's when I knew there was a God. and let me tell you, every time I tell that story to a Christian group, 100% of the men go, yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. and their wives look at them like, what are you doing? But, yeah.
What are you talking about? I can see it now. That's funny. So one of the stories I also heard about that you may want to share is that your dad always carried around with him index cards. What was that about?
Well, he didn't always carry those around. That's where he wrote his speeches, his notes. If you come out to the Reagan Library, there's a whole area there where you see his index cards, where he, in fact, wrote his speeches, kept them in his left pocket of his suit. And when he was going to give a speech, he pulled them out. That was it. And he wrote his own speeches. He was one of these people who, if you looked at his library, he actually read all the books in his library. They weren't there for show. He actually read them and reread them. He had his memory was unbelievable, as you could tell just by listening to him and what have you. So those were his speech cards when he'd go out and give a speech. And he had them, with rubber bands around him. So depending on what speech he was going to give, he'd go in the lower right-hand drawer of his desk at home and pull out whatever stack it was he was going to give that speech, put it in his pocket, and off he'd go to give a speech. So those were the index cards. But Newt Gingrich tells a great story. He introduced him one night at an event and stepped away, and Dad stepped up to the microphone. He reached in his pocket and pulled out the cards, and they fell on the floor. Oh. And Newt said, "Oh my God." He says, and my dad just reached down and just shuffled them back together, and started his speech, which from wherever the one was on top. So it didn't matter which one ended up on top. He knew the speech anyway. So
he knew the speech.
Started.
What's this story about Gaddafi? You mentioned boarding school earlier, and there was
that's
the
a threat. Jump. Boarding school to Gaddafi.
Yeah, there was something on Gaddafi that when you were in school.
No, that's way out of school. This is like 1980s. This is like 1980s. 1980s. When Dad, he sends planes into, in there, and they take out two of his homes. And Gaddafi comes out and gives a speech the next day or a press conference and said, in taking out the homes in Tripoli, they killed his adopted daughter, which was not true, but that was the announcement. He understood that Ronald Reagan had an adopted child also, and maybe he should return the favor. So I had Secret Service basically in bed with me for about 6 months, making sure I was okay. I tried to convince Gaddafi it was my brother Ron that was adopted, but that didn't work.
Yeah, there's an inside joke there somewhere.
Well, I'm the adopted one, but if I could say, look at him, not me. But no, so he threatened my life, and very worrisome for my wife and my family to have somebody of that nature threaten your life.
Sure.
That's why you have Secret Service, I guess.
Yeah. I know you never stayed in the White House. You were rather young when your dad became the 40th president of the United States.
No, I was 35.
Oh, 35. I'm confusing it with your siblings.
Yeah, I was 35 years old, so I stayed at the White House and stayed in the Queen's bedroom. My kids stayed there. Oh yeah, we stayed at the White House. Nice place, good food.
Oh. No, I think I was confusing it with your son and your daughter. They must have been very young at age when your dad was first elected.
Well, Cameron was 3.
Yes.
When Dad was elected the first time, and Ashley wasn't born until 1984.
Mm-hmm.
And so Cameron was at the first and second inaugural, and Ashley was at the second inaugural because she was born in 1984. In fact, when Dad flipped the coin for the Super Bowl that year, he had Ashley over his shoulder. So Ashley was over his shoulder asleep while Dad was flipping coins on who was going to get the kickoff in the Super Bowl. So that's kind of cool. We had a big Super Bowl party at the White House that year because Inauguration Day and Swearing In Day, which was January 20th, was also the day for the Super Bowl. And so kind of worked out kind of cool.
Boy, I remember the fact that there were so many different incidences I wanted to talk about. One of the ones that has me most surprised in terms of the Reagan history is that you were in fact the keeper of the legacy. As time went on, it was clear that you were the one espousing and protecting the Ronald Reagan legacy. And there's so many parts of it I want to get into with you right now. But one of them that really was impressive to me and showed leadership was when Ronald Reagan was in Reykjavik and he stepped away from the negotiations with Gorbachev. You want to delve into that? I think this is new ground for our Gen X, Y, and Z folks. This is very interesting about a true leader. You want to describe what your dad did in Reykjavik?
Well, this is the problem with America today, the world today. People talk about that. It's not your fault. You know about that incident, but every incident had a beginning.
Yeah.
And nobody goes back to the beginning anymore and say, how did we get there? If we ever went back to the beginning, we could solve all the problems we have, but we don't, because most people today think the history of the country started when they woke up this morning. And that's just not true. But Reykjavik, which I will be there this June and July, I'll actually be in Reykjavik. I'll actually be, at the house that they were at, Gorbachev and and my dad and what have you. But you have to go back to 1976 when Dad lost the nomination of the Republican Party. And we went back to the hotel, all of us. Didn't know if the president was going to ask my dad to be the VP or not sure. Had a room full of people, but somehow I ended up alone with my dad near a fireplace in August in Kansas City. Last place you want to be in Kansas City is near a fireplace. They thought it'd be like ambiance, right? You go, God, it's really hot. And I said to my dad, why do you even want to run for president? He says, you know, Michael, for so long I've watched American presidents sit down with secretary generals of the Soviet Union. And every time we sit down with them, they always ask us to give up something to get along with them. He says, I was running, hopefully to win the nomination and then win the presidency. So I can be the first president to sit down with the secretary general of the Soviet Union. And Michael, I was going to let them pick the table, the chairs, and the place, because, you know, that's how they do things at that level. And while the secretary general was telling me, the American president, what it was I was going to have to give up to get along with them, I was going to get up from my chair, walk around the other side of the table, lean over and whisper in his ear, "Niet." I want to be the first president to say "niet" to a secretary general of the Soviet Union. Now, this is 1976. Nancy had not yet told Dad, you're going to run again in 1980. So he wasn't aware 1980 was going to come around, he's going to run. But if you go almost 10 years to the date, because that was August of 76, and you now go to October, November of 1986, my dad's called Reykjavik. He's called there, why? To sign a treaty. He gets there and he proposed. He gets to Mikhail Gorbachev, says, I'll only sign the treaty if you give up SDI or Star Wars. I was the only guy on the planet that knew what the answer was going to be, because he told me the answer in 1976. Yet. And so when you look at the picture of him walking away with that stern face, he said no. However, a year later in Washington, D.C., Mikhail Gorbachev showed up and signed that agreement.
It wasn't yet then.
And what's happening right now at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, you go there today up through March, or not through March, I'm sorry, through September, they have the Star Wars SDI exhibit going on.
Folks, we're talking with Michael Reagan, the first of four children of Ronald Reagan, and Jane Wyman was his mom, a famous actress, award-winning actress. Michael is recanting a lot of the experiences of his dad, our 40th president of the United States, Ronald Reagan. He was dad to you, but he had his mind. He had a mindset of his own. He was head of the Screen Actors Guild, of which I'm a member, and he was also probably someone who had interesting conversation around the dining room table. What were the dining room conversations like at Thanksgiving?
We really try to stay away from politics, because Patty and Ron, didn't vote for their father. Patty led a march on Washington against her father when he was president of the United States. So we really, didn't get into politics. Somewhat we did get into politics, but I'd say this, and I'm going to say it again next week in Pennsylvania, and I tell it to a lot of Republicans, because all this infighting going on today. He had two children. Neither one of them voted for him. And it's interesting because Maureen and I, the night before an election, would always flip a coin to see whose vote we were going to cancel. I was going to, you cancel Patty's, you cancel Ron's, we'll flip a coin, heads or tails. But the fact of the matter, even though they disagree with my father politically and didn't vote for him or voted against him or let him march on Washington against him, Thanksgiving they were there. Dad never chased them away from the table, which is what's happening today. We're chasing people away from the table we disagree with. And then we figure out what's going on. What's wrong with us? What's wrong with us is you keep on talking about Ronald Reagan, but you learn nothing from Ronald Reagan. So Thanksgiving was great to have the family there and talk and be together. We get the family photo, if you will, for the White House and send it across America. But it really stayed away from politics that much, more about the ranch. You go into the ranch house, you don't see famous pictures of anything but horses. That's it, horses. No people, horses. And Nancy found out a long time ago, if she would have made my dad make a choice between her or the ranch, she may never have married my dad. That ranch was all important to my dad.
You know, it's so interesting because that is the story that everybody loves. That's the image that everybody loves. One of the key things that I think sticks with us today has transcended even into the Trump administration is this legacy of liberty and freedom. You manage it in a foundation that perpetuates those principles. But it's even interesting to see how the press today may try to distinguish Trump from Reagan, even though Trump himself would not deny the importance of the Reagan legacy. Your comment on that?
They're two different people, two different times.
Yeah.
You're talking about the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. You're now in social media world is where you're at today.
But would you say the principles are the same?
I think the principles in many ways are the same, but I think it's more of a hardcore belief with my father, where I think you have Trump more plays the political game. Where do I need to go to get this done? I think that Trump becomes his own worst enemy in so many ways.
Yeah.
You get Trump overload, if you will. You're on the news every day you get tired type thing. It's like today, I was telling someone, I said, with what's going on in the world today, Trump should be 50 points up on everybody. But he's tied or 3 points up or 4 points up or what have you. And people, to win, you've got to have people who believe in you. I run into more people who will tell me that they disagree with my father politically, but they voted for him because they trusted him and they liked him. You don't find that on the Trump side. You really don't find that. With Trump, you either hate him or you love him. And that's a problem for Trump. And he's got to deal with that side of it. And that's before all this stuff he's going on now. You either love him or you hate him. And many people have a hard time dealing with the New York businessman, which is exactly what he is. And New York businessmen do business in a completely different way than anybody else on the planet. And so it conjures up hate. And that's unfortunate that we're in that arena. But he's got to work on solving that problem if he's going to get independents and like-minded Democrats to come over and vote for him in November, because that's going to make the difference. People don't hate Biden. They hate Trump. So he's going to make that work for him.
Do you think there's any part of that said that, look, I may not have liked Trump's personality and it rubs me, but oh my God, look at the situation we're in now with Biden. Do you think maybe 3.5 years with Biden, people have come to realize principles come before personalities?
At the end of the day, people vote for the most likable candidate.
Not the best candidate, the most likable.
Most likable. Why did Trump beat Hillary? Nobody likes Hillary. I mean, it's all about likability. In 2020, people liked Biden more than they liked Trump. A lot going on at that period of time. Biden wins out of likability. So it's all about likability coming up in 2024. And, I think Trump absolutely is becoming more likable. I mean, you're starting to feel sorry for this guy with all that's going on. So it's working in his favor. Will it stay working in his favor after the nomination process in the summer?
I just wonder, Michael, and you're better suited to answer this. You can't make this up. The difference on one level between your father and Biden is I remember the speech that brought a tear to my eyes. Well, it was actually a letter that he had written to the nation talking about his confirmed concern with his own personal failing cognition. Mm-hmm. He did it in the most leadership, classy way that I can imagine. I said to myself, even at a younger age, what other leader had the balls to do that or would
Mhm.
do that? And here it sits against a backdrop of our current leader, who not only is not acknowledging it, but is orchestrating a regime behind the scenes to give him the license to hide away in his basement and to stage court cases against Trump during the time necessary for people to see a debate between Trump and Biden is not likely to happen, not because Biden's willing to do it or one of them is not willing to do it. It's because they're staging court cases against Trump that run up against all this early voting schedules that vary from state to state. My concern is we may not see a debate between Trump and Biden, not because Biden's not willing to debate, but because Biden has orchestrated selective prosecution charges through corrupted
Yeah.
DAs and prosecutors to keep Trump busy in court. And hey, guys, what do you want
Yeah,
from me, Mr.
but you're
Trump's a
saying
little.
you're,
Go
you're you're
ahead.
making the misnomer is you're saying Biden's doing this. Do you really believe Biden's doing this?
Oh
Or do you think it's
no,
people behind Biden is this? Do you
that's
think it's like
correct.
Obama doing this
I'm
and
glad
what
you
have
said
you
that.
that's going
So
on?
let's
Uh,
define the deep state. Who's behind Biden?
well, but the other side of the coin is look at the media. Where's the media on this?
Okay,
Where's the media? Media is not to be found, and
silent.
and there's absolute silence from the media questioning Biden or any of these things. It's hopefully people are starting to really see it and understand it, especially with what's going on today in the world that we live in, on the college campuses and every place else, 2 wars, college campuses on fire, and what have you. Hopefully, it's to a point the media is having to cover those things now.
Well, it's gone
But
a step too
but
far. Even in today's news, I'm watching New York City police finally step up and
yeah,
address the Columbia University issue. I
well,
hope
they had to
other
be
issues.
asked. They
Pardon
can't
me?
go in unless they're asked. They couldn't go in until they were asked by the university. But if I
That
will
is a
tell you,
leadership issue at the
if
university issue I'd like to ask you about. But isn't it true that private institutions, when there's public or civil unrest, they ask government to step in and help them or not, they weren't shy about asking government for funding, but if they're going to now ask for government's help with these police, why would government have to wait for that? Why, if there's civil unrest, reported actual civil unrest, vandalism or assault of one type or another,
if
intimidation?
if it were if it were white supremacists calling for death to America and death to blacks, the National Guard would have been there within 24 hours, and this would be over.
So
Simple.
why? What's the difference? Why has it?
The difference the
Why is
difference is the difference is all those people rioting are youthful voters, and they think they can bring them on board to vote for them in November. So that's why they won't take a stand. They're standing in the middle, getting run over by everybody. You have a president actually in hiding. But out here in California, have you seen our governor out anywhere? We have UCLA and SC on fire, and our governor is AWOL, absolutely without leave, like with all the Democrats out there, because that's their constituents. Those are their people. And so they're really having trouble how to deal with their people who have now turned on them.
yes? Well, 40 years ago, your dad said, and I'm quoting, "I'm sick and tired of the argument about whether if there is some effort to enforce law and order is going to escalate anything at all. The plain truth is of the matter is that it has to stop, and it has to stop like the day before yesterday." He was
Mhm.
talking about uprisings in the universities, and the liberal
Berkeley.
professors he was engaged with were trying to shoot him down as if to say, you're part of the problem, Ronald Reagan. You're not the solution. Well, I think he nailed it in the bud and proved them wrong.
You know, the end of the story, that night or one of those nights when all that was going on, somebody threw a Molotov cocktail through the window downstairs in their home up in Sacramento. Scared the hell out of Nancy and Dad. And so they went, went to the stairs, and Dad's going down the stairs. Nancy's at the top of the stairs saying, "What are you doing?" And Dad goes down the stairs. He gets to the bottom stairs. He starts to chuckle. He says, "Only in California." And Nancy, "What are you talking about?" Well, the Molotov cocktail they threw through the window, was in a champagne bottle.
I want to hear more of these.
But that was the magic. That was the magic of my father compared to Donald Trump. Dad dealt with things with humor. He found humor in everything. A wink and a nod, a little bit of humor. He reached across the aisle. He got things done. The largest tax break in American history came with my dad and Tip O'Neill working together. That would not happen today in America. Wouldn't happen. But how did it happen? It happened because my dad invited Tip O'Neill and his wife to the White House for dinner. And the next day, Tip O'Neill would go back to his staff and say, "I'm going to take the bill to the floor." And you know what? They said, "What did he promise you?" He promised me nothing. What did you talk about? The president talked about the greatness of America, the goodness of her people, and how we working together can make it better for all. Before I knew it, I'm telling Irish stories with the president. We're drinking a glass of wine. And today I'm telling you, I'm going to take that bill to the floor, and I know it'll pass.
Tip
That doesn't happen
O'Neill,
anymore.
Tip O'Neill, a staunch Democrat from Massachusetts, sitting with Ronald Reagan. That's
We
a
don't have
wonderful.
we don't have those giants anymore. We don't have the Hubert Humphreys, the Tip O'Neills. We don't have any giants anymore. There's no statesmen out there. Name a statesman that we have. Where are they? There's nobody out there to stop. The stuff that's going on now is happening because we have no leadership anywhere. There's no statesman.
What's your take on some of the states of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., for example? Does he help or hurt Trump? Does he help or hurt Biden?
Who knows? But I do know that my dad became president of the United States because of Robert Kennedy, not Nancy. It was Robert Kennedy who made him president of the United States, made him governor first. Because my dad was doing a television show called General Electric Theater back in the late 50s, early 60s. And sure enough, Robert Kennedy called the president of General Electric and said, "You know that guy that's working for a television show you have, Ronald Reagan?" "Yeah." "He's running around the country to GE plants speaking ill of my brother, the president, and the issues my brother brings up. And I understand your government contracts are coming up for renewal, and it would go a long ways towards getting your government contracts renewed if you could find a way to get rid of that guy going around the country to your GE plants within 48 hours. General Electric Theater is canceled. Ronald Reagan's out of a job. He was a Democrat, by the way, at that point. My sister Maureen browbeat her father. She was a Republican. My dad changed registration. Remember, he said the party left me? The party left him without a job. That's what they did. So now he's jobless. A little upset, changes registration from Democrat to Republican, and now has time to write a brand new speech. He ends up writing a brand new speech. You know what the speech is? A Time for Choosing. Given Barry Goldwater in November of 1964.
Wow.
Launches his career into the governorship and ultimately into the presidency of the United States. Robert Kennedy doesn't make that call. Dad's doing GE Theater. How do I know that story? My sister Maureen, myself, Nancy sitting at a dining room table with my dad, and Dad's explaining how he's not going to be on TV Sunday night because the show had been canceled. And why?
Wow. Yeah. Talk to me about the
You might say my father was the first one canceled by the left.
Yeah, he was canceled by the left. You could say that certainly helped him in this case. Well, this is one of the interesting stories. There's not too many people who may have forgotten, like you said earlier, it wasn't in the news today or this morning, and so their history is zero. But it is true. Ronald Reagan was a Democrat before he became a Republican, and that transition was very disruptive, not only as you described just now in his personal life, but it certainly impacted the Democrat and Republican Party in California.
Well, also interesting to go back to say you remember SAG. My dad was president of SAG 9 times.
Yeah.
SAG and the Writers Guild and Screen Actors Guild all went on strike this year. Last time they were on strike was 1960. You know who led them on strike in 1960? Ronald Reagan.
Wow.
You know why you get residuals? Ronald Reagan. And when he put that into place, when he was president of Screen Actors Guild, he wrote himself out of it because he didn't want people to think he only put it into place so when his career was on the wane, he would find a way to make money. So he's the only guy on the planet who never got residuals from his work. Damn it.
Yeah, yeah, it affects others right now. It's affecting others. I saw your letter that you had written at the Reagan Legacy Foundation website, and I'll come back to the quote that you post at the banner at the header at the top from your dad. But talk about the Reagan Legacy website.
Well, let me tell you that first of all, my sister was dying of melanoma, and back in 2001, and she was at St. John's about 3 months before she would pass, and she chased everybody out of the room. I started to leave. She said, "Not you." So I closed the door and locked it, and we had that brother-sister talk. And she said, "You know, Michael, I'm not going to be around much longer, and our father has a wonderful legacy. And will you promise me that you get to a point in your life you can give up radio? You'll give up radio to carry on the legacy of our father because the story needs to be told." And I promised my sister literally on her deathbed that I would do that. And 2009 was that time where I could go out and speak and go around the country and speak, which I do. And we started the Legacy Foundation. We started originally providing scholarships to the men and women who served aboard the USS Ronald Reagan. We still do. We also provide scholarships to their family members who are at home trying to better their education. Nobody else does that. Government helps the kids on the ship. They don't help the family members at home. So we do that. And then we started a program a few years ago at Normandy, France, St. Mary Glees, first town freed by America on D-Day morning, 4 a.m. in the morning. And we started a brick project. People can go online, order a brick, and we install it there at St. Mary Glees, Normandy, France, with the name someone who fought in the Second World War European theater. And we've been doing that. It's been on hold now for almost a year because they're redoing the whole area because we're getting ready for the 80th anniversary of D-Day coming up on June 6th. And it's also the 40th anniversary of my dad speaking on D-Day at Pointe du Hoc, my dad being the first president to ever speak at Normandy on D-Day. And every president since then has in fact spoken on D-Day at Normandy, France, which is phenomenal. I go there all the time, and it's breathtaking to go there and just see what these kids did at 17, 18, 19 years old and what have you. But so we work with them quite a bit.
And part of the Reagan Legacy Foundation is on display at the Reagan Library, is it not?
No, Reagan Library, Reagan Legacy Foundation is completely separate.
Completely separate.
But yeah, we have a Reagan exhibit at St. Mary Glees, Normandy, France. We have that. We have an exhibit that we put in Germany on the 20th anniversary of the fall of the wall at the Mauer Museum or Checkpoint Charlie Museum. We put a display in there through our foundation. So we're busy. We worked with Poland to put in a statue of my father and Pope John Paul in Gdansk, Poland, to honor them for the part they played in bringing freedom to the world.
Michael Reagan is our guest today, the son of Ronald Reagan and Jane Wyman, the oldest of 4 children of Ronald Reagan. And Michael has given us his precious time to talk about the legacy and a comparison to some of the current events between a Reagan administration and how some of these current event issues might have been handled differently. But you can see a lot more of this legacy at www.reaganlegacyfoundation.org. I'm certain through that website, you'll be able to make contact to Michael Reagan directly or indirectly. If not on Twitter, he's got a very popular Twitter page too, folks. So, hey, in fact, I'm one of your followers, Michael, and
thank you.
I'll be throwing in my 2 cents when I see your good stuff posted. There's so much more to talk about, and I fear we're running out of your time. So why don't you capsulize two or three things that we may or may not have talked about, and take us to a close?
June 5th will be the 20th anniversary of the passing of my father. We're doing big events at the Reagan Library in Simi Valley. And it brings back the memory of the day after my father was buried. And I had breakfast with Margaret Thatcher that morning. And when I ran into Margaret Thatcher, she said to me, Michael, think of what we could have accomplished had your father been elected in 1976.
Huh.
I said, Lady Thatcher, the Berlin Wall would still be up. The Cold War would still be going on. And she said, why would you say that? I said, I think God chooses his people. He chooses his time. She said, what do you mean? I said, where were you in 1976? Where was Lech Walesa? Where was Václav Havel? Where was Helmut Kohl? Where was Mikhail Gorbachev? And where was Pope John Paul? None of you were in place in 1976. If my father would have been elected, he would have been out of office January of 1985. Mikhail Gorbachev doesn't come into play till 1985. But where were you in 1980? You were in place. John Paul was in place. Lech Walesa, Václav Havel, all of you were in place. All you needed was a leader to bring you together for a common goal. And the common goal was bringing freedom to the world. God chooses his time and his people. And she looked at me and said, I've never thought of that. I said, it's something I thought about a whole lot. Thank God you all found that leader. And that's what the world needs today. They need that leader to bring the world together. And the world is waiting. And unfortunately, we're twiddling our thumbs.
Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, the timing couldn't have been better for a transatlantic relationship that was codified between the two of them. And you are correct, timing is everything. It's godly. You know, we all have different experiences in our lives at different times. And I look today at what's on the news and what's being brought forward. And whether it's Trump, Reagan, Biden, you pick the poison. The fact of the matter is, we are all learning things at different times. I'm just sad that I don't see the current generation of educators and students learning from these lessons, some of which you've just presented today, and that
Well,
history.
I will tell you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and it's regrettable that history has to repeat itself. Go ahead.
I will tell you this. I do a lot of work with the Young Americans Foundation, who bought my father's ranch in 1998, who kept it pristine. It is exactly the way Dad had left it because he didn't know he wasn't going back. They used it as a fundraising tool to raise money, to promote conservatives on college campuses and high school campuses, now middle schools. They just took over the home in Dixon, Illinois, Tampico, Illinois. My daughter Ashley's on that board of directors, the Young Americans Foundation. I'll be speaking there June 16th to 200 high school students. They're trying to make that happen. And by teaching young children about Ronald Reagan, having them go up to the ranch and walk in the steps of my father. He called the ranch his cathedral in the sky. And it truly, truly was. And these young kids get to go visit it every year when we have the meetings at the Young Americans Foundation at the Ranch Center in Santa Barbara. So I would suggest people want to find out more about that, go to YAF.org. They can go there and learn about YAF.org and what they're doing to keep the legacy of my father moving forward, and how they may want to take one of their kids and get them enrolled to come on one of the meetings that they have there in Santa Barbara or Washington, D.C. or in Illinois, and maybe even visit the ranch and walk in the footsteps of my father. YAF.org.
YAF, spell it.
YAF, YAF.org.
Oh, one
Free
F,
topic.
okay. YAF.org. Folks, we've been talking today with Michael Reagan, son of Ronald Reagan, our 40th president of the United States. Michael, I can't thank you enough. I hope we can do an update sometime in the future.
Again.
Boy, it'd be nice to just say, hey, remember that last episode we did? Where are we since then? Just
Yeah,
give you
anytime.
That would be a lot of fun. I'd like to close with something, ladies and gentlemen. It's on Michael's website, www.reaganlegacyfoundation.org. Check that out too. There's a place in that organization for you. And here's what a very famous and important person left us with. He left Michael with the thought that whatever else history may say about me when I'm gone, I hope it will record that I appeared to your best hopes, not your worst fears, to your confidence rather than your doubts. My dream is that you will travel the road ahead with liberty's lamp guiding your steps and opportunity's arm steadying your way. Should I be so lucky to have had a father like that with that guidance, Michael?
Where is that guy?
Where's that guy? That guy is Ronald Reagan, the 40th president of the United States. And I'm so glad you captured that as Ronald Reagan's quote. He's had quite a few quotes, but that one shows leadership, vision, inspiration, opportunity, and freedom. Thank you, Michael Reagan, for being with me today.
Thank you. God bless.
And thank all of you for joining us on another episode of Gene Valentino's Grassroots Truthcast. See you soon.
8 years ago, we developed and launched the best bed sheets ever. Since then, you've all enjoyed the best sleep of your life. And to thank you all for your support, we're bringing you our bed sheets for the lowest price in MyPillow history. Get our seasonal flannel sheets for 50% off. They're nearly sold out, so get yours today before they're gone. Check out our new Percale line. Queen size only $39.98. King size only $49.98. And our famous Giza Dream bed sheets, queen size originally $139.96. Wait on it. Now only $59.98. King's just $10 more. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get huge discounts on all MyPillow bed sheets. And for a limited time, when you order $75 or more, your entire order ships absolutely free. We have very low quantities at these prices, so order now.